This video is gonna be one of the most in-demand videos that you guys asked me about for so long. So many of you asked me, Igor, how can I progress in chess if I don't have that much time to allocate for chess? And that's why in today's video, I'd like to share with you the top 3 shortcuts that allowed me to become an international master when I was 13 and to become Grandmaster later, as well as they helped many of my students as well. So it's going to be a really exciting journey over the shortcuts of chess improvement. Fasten your seatbelt, and I'm going to walk you through the opening, how to handle that, and then we're going to be talking about the middle game and an end game. Therefore, it's a complete concept, and that's why I would recommend that you stay till the end so that you get this entire system of fast chess improvement and you can implement this for your rapid chess improvement. Let's get right into it now. First of all, let's talk about the openings. And the shortcut for an opening is to lock your opening quickly. Lock your opening early in the game. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say you're going down the classical path and you play the first move, let's say pawn d4 or pawn e4. And when you play a move like that, you got to be ready to know what to do when your opponent chooses to play the classical line, let's say the rival pass, or maybe the Sicilian defense by pushing the c-pawn forward, and there are like about 10 systems after that black can choose to play later on. They can also choose to play the Caracan defense against you, the French defense, the Perk defense. I mean, you got it, right? The Alliance defense. There is so much that you need to learn here. But what if instead of e4, you choose to play pawn b3 on move 1? Then it's kind of like you're telling to your opponent, I don't care what you prepare for this game. We're not going to play that. We're going to play my opening, which is this b3 opening, also known as the Larson's opening, right? That is just it. In this case, you only learn one system and one only. And if you aren't familiar with this opening, I've got another video which covers that. You may check this out and you're good to go. Just imagine how simpler your life is going to become. Or even if, let's say, you say, I don't want to play b3 for some reason. Let's say you want to stick to e4. Anyway, let's say after that your opponent goes pawn e5. Once again, if you play the move which everyone plays, knight to f3, then you gotta be ready to meet the Petrov's defense, the Stafford gambit, the Philidor's defense, the classical move knight c6, and after that, if let's say you go into the rival pass, then there are like 10 different systems that black can choose to play, and you can spend the rest of your life learning them. Let's take a move back here. What if instead of all that, you choose to play the bishop's opening here, bishop to c4? Once again, the point here is to lock your opening choice early, not to pick a certain variation, several times later in the game, but to try to do it as early as you can so that your opponent doesn't have much options before that. And now again, you're just getting the bishop's opening. That's it, just one system. And strangely enough, I've got a video about that. And with so many videos, I've got a video about anything. At least I hope so. So if you're wondering how to play the bishop's opening, you can check that video out. Now let's also figure out what you can do when you're playing black. Now with the turn of the table, let's say your opponent goes e4, the most played move here. If you choose to respond with symmetric move pawn e5, once again you gotta be ready for the king's gambit, the central game, of course the Vienna game, the bishop's opening with bishop to c4, the knight to f3 opening, and there are again so many lines after that. What if instead of all that, here on the move 1, you choose to play the Scandinavian defense? Then you lock your opening on move 1. And now, hey, we're playing the Scandinavian defense, right? You don't care what your opponent has in mind here, but you say, no, we're going to play my opening. And I also have videos about the Scandinavian defense if you're unfamiliar with it. But the point is, you choose a certain one system, you learn it, and you keep playing it. So you also get a lot of experience playing this single system, and therefore you will always be better prepared than your opponents. And it's also super simple. Okay, now we're coming to the shortcut number 2, which is how do you approach the middle game position. But in fact, this same shortcut is going to help you in other stages of the game as well. And I call it a lap principle, which is the acronym for least active piece principle. It simply says that when you need to find the right move in the position, instead of thinking and being confused about so many different rules that you need to keep in mind, or calculating a lot of variations and not being able to visualize them anyway, instead you just follow this single principle of the least active piece, which says that you need to find the least active piece in your position and improve it. That's it, right? And if you think that it sounds basic, let me show you how Carlsen played almost the entire game just by following this single concept, and it's his game playing black against Caruana playing white, therefore it's a very high level game. White opens up with pawn e4, pawn c5, well, so far it's just an opening choice, knight f3, and let's even start right here, from the very beginning of the game. Now, how do you follow the principle of the least active piece? You just take a look at your army, and you think, okay, who are doing nothing? Who are the lazy guys that aren't involved yet? And then you think of how to bring them forward, how to get them involved into the game. Normally at the beginning, like, all of your pieces are inactive, therefore you have a nice choice of which pieces to develop first. So he plays knight to c6. White goes bishop b5. Okay, now it's all the same thing. How can I develop these guys? And normally we need to develop the minor pieces first, because they are also locking your rooks in the corner of the board anyway, so the rook cannot go here, because there are minor pieces there. Therefore, you have to develop your minor pieces first. But there is nothing so special about this, it's just about development. So black goes g6 here, black chosen to develop the bishop this way, which is a possible move. White castled, black played bishop g7, white played here pawn c3. Now, what would an average player think? Oh, white is playing c3, he's going to build the center, what am I going to do about this? Should I prevent this? Should I counterattack in the center? Now, what do you do now after studying this video? None of the above, right? You just think, okay, who are the guys who are doing nothing here? How can I get them involved into the game? That's exactly what Carlsen did. He played knight to f6. You see how simple it is? And it's also super effective. Black played knight f6, also putting pressure to the pawn. White decided to protect it with the rook. And once again, you look at these pieces that so far played no moves, and you think, well, how can I move one of them? Get involved one of the pieces who were not involved at all in this game. Black decided to castle, it's the only logical move. White played d4. And again, think about this in terms of an average player. An average player will think, okay, white goes d4, he wants to take here, maybe he wants to push forward here, attack the knight. Should I take? Should I not take? What am I going to do here? Let's cut the fluff once again. Least active piece. What's the least active piece for now? Well, you got to bring your bishop out, right? Because normally we develop the minor pieces first. Again, you can't develop your rooks anyway without developing your minor pieces previously. Therefore, Carlsen thinks, how do I move this bishop out? And he plays pawn d5 here, opens the diagonal for the bishop, and simultaneously, you also start finding the center. White goes e5. Now black has to react, the pawn attacks the knight, but the knight can relocate to a nice central position, and simultaneously it also protects this pawn on c5 so that you don't have to worry about this. White played bishop e3, and maybe he wants to grab this pawn on the next move. Therefore, of course, if you notice that your opponent is ready to capture something, you may wish to do something about this to stop this, so he simply traded here in the center. Now it's the same question. The least active piece. Which pieces have made no moves in this game yet? And these are these queenside pieces, right? So again, the rook can't play a meaningful move here, so we can exclude this. That would be either a bishop or a queen move. And whatever you choose is good. It's not that there is a single good option and everything else is bad. Carlsen decided to bring the queen out first, which also challenges the bishop over here. White played queen e2 to defend it, and black played bishop d7, finalizing the development and bringing the bishop out. And also, if you look at classical opening tutorials, they'll give you a whole lot of rules about playing an opening, right? You gotta castle early, you gotta connect your rooks, you gotta develop knights before bishops, you gotta develop minor pieces before heavy pieces, don't bring your queen out too early. There are 10 different rules, but you can see that when you understand this single principle, let's say the principle of the least active piece, that basically covers everything. You don't have to dive deeper into these more specific rules. And if you're familiar with my teaching overall, let's say with some of my courses such as the Grandmaster Secrets, then you know that this is the cornerstone of my entire teaching, and well, it's pretty effective, I gotta say, because it's very simple, very practical, and it gives you good results. Okay, let's play a couple more moves. I played bishop a4, now rook to c8, also a very simple choice. The rook hasn't played any moves, so you want to move it and make it involved. Now it potentially is ready to operate along this c file. White played knight c3. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to watch over your opponent's moves, because otherwise you can blunder and he can grab something. Now this knight is ready to capture this pawn in the center, therefore black decided to, okay, let me just trade it off. And now even the middle game position is here, but the rule is still the same. Least active piece, right? So black thinks, okay, what are my least active pieces for now? The pieces that aren't doing much. And these are probably the rooks, which aren't doing much. This bishop on d7 also is just standing there, but is not really attacking anything. So that gives you an idea that maybe you wish to move this knight from c6 somewhere so that it opens up the line for the rook and the diagonal for the bishop. But you cannot move the knight away immediately, because if, let's say, you would play knight a5 immediately, which is normally would be a good move, but in this case it fails to bishop d7. You just lose your bishop here. So black can't do this. That's why instead in the game black simply played queen d8 first, protecting the bishop, and on the next move he's planning to go knight a5, right? So white played bishop b3 and black played knight a5. And now we have this active rook, we have the active bishop, and the knight also is ready to potentially maybe take this bishop or to land on this nice square on c4. You can see how simple the black's moves are, and black won the game later on. It was a long game. I'm not gonna show you the complete game. If you are curious, you can download it by clicking the link below the video. As always, all the resources are there in the video description. But I think that you got the point by now, how you can handle the middle game positions with ease. And the third shortcut is one of my most favorite ones because it works like crazy. I learned it from one of my coaches back in the day, where I noticed in his games that he was a Grandmaster Melanyuk, and he played very simple positions, very simple openings, trying to transition right into an endgame. And even though the endgame position looked completely drawish to me, he won many of them. And I was curious, I asked him, like, how do you do that? And he said it's simple. Nowadays, you know, if you look at most players, they know openings, they know tactics, but they have no idea how to play an endgame. And that's why you can outplay them there very easily. And this is exactly the case. There are many instances where you can transition into an endgame if you choose to, and there you can outplay your opponent. Let me show you how you can do this. For example, let's say you go e4, your opponent goes for the French defense. Very often, especially when you're playing white, you have this option to transition into an endgame if you choose to. For example, here you can go into this simple position after the exchange variation. Very simple, you don't need to know any theory here, you just bring your pieces out. And at this point, if you want to initiate the queen trade, you can play queen e2 check, and if black doesn't want to, deal with this thing, they would have to go queen to e7. Allowing this trade of queens, and you can go ahead and do this. You wouldn't find any like top level players playing like that, because on a Grandmaster level that is a draw. But that's certainly not true for players, below 1600, even below 2000. You can very easily outplay them in an endgame position like this, which is objectively speaking equal, and you can win many games easily just because they have no clue of what to do in such a position. And let me share with you how you can handle these positions. So first of all, of course, just as always, you still follow the least active piece principle. You can carry it on across the entire game. Therefore, white needs to develop. So white played here bishop f4, attacking this pawn over there. Black decided to move it. Now white castled. Black did the same. White played rook e1, getting the rook involved, also attacking this bishop. Black played rook e8 symmetrically, pawn h3. And I checked this position in the database, by the way. The most played move by black here is pawn h6, which already shows that black has no clue. They don't know what's the endgame plan, because the h3 move makes some sense. This the black's bishop can't go here. Can't go here, the square is controlled by the white's bishop, therefore the white's h3 move hampers development of that bishop, but when black plays h6 it just does nothing at all. Black simply doesn't know what to do. Okay, white plays knight d2, bishop e6, c3, knight to d7. So we reached a pretty simple looking endgame position, where most players would have no idea what to do here, or would think that it's a dead draw, or most likely will be lost and have no clue. And here's the point, in an endgame there are only two major plans, which is either to move your passed pawns, if you have them available, or to attack opponent's pawns. And this is the concept that most players are unfamiliar with, and they simply don't know what to do, because usually you cannot attack your opponent's king in an endgame. The piece which delivers the checkmate most frequently is a queen, but in an endgame it's already gone, therefore you normally cannot checkmate your opponent. And if you try to, that would only break your position apart. Now, when you know the right plan, let's say we're talking about this particular position, but this is of course applicable to any other position just as well. So, what is your plan here? If you would have passed pawns, you would move them forward, but you don't. Then how do I attack opponent's pawns? You ask yourself this question, and after a little bit of thinking, you can come to the move, for example, such as knight to b3. And first of all, your opponent can easily overlook your idea overall, because again, they have no clue, and they could easily play, any move, rook d8 or any move, and then you go knight a5, because that was your intent. You're going after this pawn, and all of a sudden it's time for black to resign, because they can't protect this pawn. If the pawn moves forward, you would win the other pawn over here on c6, attacking a whole lot in the black's position, and the rook, the bishop, and the other pawn, it's time for black to resign. You can see how easy it can be. Anyway, you may think, well, that was just a blunder. That's not gonna happen. Okay, let's take a couple moves back. Let's say your opponent is prudent and he or she understood your intent and they did something about that. They would play something like b6, which is a bad move for many different reasons. One of them is it weakens their pawn chain overall, and without understanding that that's the main problem in an endgame, having weak pawns, they would easily play a move like that. And then you ask yourself once again the same question: how do I attack his pawns? Okay, and then you can come to a move like this, and you're gonna go here and attack this pawn, attack the rook. All of a sudden there is no way out for black, and once again, funnily enough, it's time for black to resign here, even though it seemed like a complete draw maybe just one move ago. But just because black has no clue, they can fall apart so easily. By the way, here's a quick also challenge for you. What if black chooses to remove this pawn from c6 so that you can't go after it, and they play pawn c5? Can you find the winning idea for white here? If you can, write it down in the comments below. Let's see how many of you can handle this. And if you have some doubts or questions about this and you want to dive deeper into this, then you may click the link on the screen or below the video and attend my free masterclass, where I'm going to walk you through my teaching system, and I'm showing you how you can use these systems, how you can train this, and how you can use this in your games in the most efficient way possible. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so that you don't miss out on our future videos. Take care.